Some of these other guys who are natural and who are like, maybe they're even power lifters, and you look at their muscle bellies and you're like, damn, like that guy is freaking popping. Like he looks huge. But it's cracking YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's having a good day. I've been super slammed, but I wanted to bring you guys another upload. I have a few more coming down the pipeline. Today's topic is lifting heavy or lifting light for maximal tissue gain. Now, there's a ton of nuance with this topic that not a lot of people bring up. A lot of people like to cite certain science and data and movements, etc. But there's quite a few easy, low-hanging fruit that I think everybody should be thinking about that doesn't get brought up that much in this topic. Obviously, let's just get the assumptions out of the way as far as your training program, your diet, and your sleep. And let's just assume that those things are relatively in check, at least 80% in check. What is going to be best for you, lifting light or lifting heavy for maximal contractile tissue gain? Now, I'm going to start off with another little disclaimer. And this actually rolls into the first nuance or first kind of perspective that people don't discuss. And that is, not everybody is the same. Now that we got that out of the way, everyone has an opinion. A lot of people have anecdotal evidence, but it is a fact that certain people have different muscle fiber makeup in their skeletal contractile tissue, meaning some people have a higher level of those hybrid fibers or the type 2s that are fast twitch rather than having slow twitch muscle tissue. Now, obviously, certain muscles on the body have different makeups with those muscle fiber types, but it is pretty well known that every single person is going to have a different muscle fiber makeup on their skeletal, as well as how their muscle bellies look, and then obviously insertion points and all these other things on how the muscles actually look on someone's frame. Obviously, the easiest example of this is the long insertion or the short insertion on the bicep. Some people flex, it looks like a little golf ball. Some people flex and it does not look like a golf ball because they have a longer insertion point. So obviously, insertion point has a huge play on how long the muscle tissue is versus how short the tendon or how long it is. And the muscle bellies themselves is also another genetic factor. Then now we go down to the tertiary factor, which is the fiber type. So people who have a ton of those fast twitch fibers in their showy skeletal muscle tissue, biceps, shoulders, chest, etc., those people are not going to get good results by lifting super light, like endurance style, like lifting. It's just not going to work. The second thing that a lot of people don't discuss when it comes to lifting heavy or lifting light, and probably should have defined those first, but you guys get the idea. One factor is age, okay? Obviously, if you're an older gentleman, older female, and you have past injuries and you're getting up there, you have this risk versus reward balance, right? Do you, like, let's assume your form and all that's in check, but at the end of the day, if you're really lifting heavy, there's always some risk potential, right? And if you're older, why would you put yourself at risk for injury if you don't have to necessarily do that? Because there's other ways to get overload, per se, than just to lift heavy. Now, I'm going to counter that with a lot of those younger guys and gals, especially the younger girls. They do not like to lift heavy because they think they're going to get bulky. And in reality, they end up lifting so light that they're not breaking enough contractile tissue down to even develop it back up. They're doing like cardio weights, basically, when you need to be doing more like hypertrophy, a little bit more overload. So that is another thing that a lot of newer people getting into the gym don't have a very good concept of light versus heavy and what actually is light and what is heavy. Super common mistake in the beginning. People don't want to push. Just some personal anecdotal evidence and some observations, and I have heard some people in the industry, have discussed this as well. There's a huge difference between natural and unnatural when it comes to lifting light and heavy. Uh, Typically speaking, obviously, if you're unnatural, you're going to be able to withstand a ton of volume and you'll be able to recover faster, which kind of, I don't want to say allows you to lift light, but allows you to lift moderate with an extreme amount of volume. Now, obviously, volume is just weight times reps, and increasing volume and increasing overload that can help you gain more tissue, right? But obviously, if you're enhanced, you're going to be able to withstand even more volume and still grow. Now, kind of circling back to observations, is that a lot of people who are natural really get fuller looking when they lift moderate and heavier rather than lifting light with a ton of volume. Now, this may have something to do with just like the overall like structural stress that the muscle is going through, but also the fact that those individuals aren't enhanced. So they can't achieve like super physiological amounts of volume and just really like attacking it with like that vector. It's almost like they have to get more of that structural stress on the tissue to really get those like fuller looking muscle bellies. Obviously, this is purely anecdotal observations, but it's something that I've definitely noticed with natural athletes that tend to lift only hypertrophy without any like high structural stress, no powerlifting movements, all machine kind of stuff, like staying away from compounds and just doing like a lot of lighter work. They typically don't look the fullest as some of these other guys who are natural and who are like, maybe they're even power lifters, and you look at their muscle bellies and you're like, damn, like that guy is freaking popping, like he looks huge, but he's lifting heavy and he's not even really training as a bodybuilder, but he's huge. Obviously, it's like the old trope of stronger muscle is a bigger muscle, but I think there may be some deeper scientific underlining reasoning behind that, and why you see kind of a lot of those natural bodybuilders starting to kind of change their tune and really start to push on the overload side when it comes to structural stress. Again, not just like progressive overload. Progressive overload can mean so many things, right? You can be adding more reps, you could be adding more weight, you could be pausing, aka increasing time under tension, you could be doing a higher muscle activation exercises, right? For example, a normal bicep curl just with a dumbbell, you're not getting maximal pull on your bicep. Maybe you're doing 30 pounds. Okay. Well, now if you go to a cable where you're bringing it behind the body and you're really pulling it forward, now you have way more activation throughout the range of motion, aka you're increasing the overload if you were just using 30 pounds versus a 30-pound dumbbell, right? So there's a ton of different ways to increase overload, but with this whole light versus heavy nuance discussion, there's a lot to unpack. And my biggest like takeaway for anyone from this video is obviously do what works best for you and try these things out. Try it out on a mesocycle. You might find, hey, when I train my biceps light, they do not grow as much as when I train them heavy at 8 reps instead of training them at 15 reps with said weight. Take notes of these things and make these little observations. And hey, you might be someone who, no matter what you do, your muscles grow. Obviously, that would be the best case scenario, but since you clicked on this video, I'm sure you're looking for what to do and why. So there are genetic outliers out there. Certain things are going to work for certain people, and other things are not going to. So at the end of the day, I cannot really say lifting light or lifting heavy is better, but with that small nuance that if you are struggling with looking fuller and having those like really nice juicy muscle bellies that you freaking see popping all over Instagram, and you're also natural and you're wondering why, you're probably not getting that like really high stress overload. You need to be doing heavier compound lifts, and even on your accessories, you may want to push down the reps into those eights and into those sixes for here and there, and really try to force those muscles to grow. Obviously, whatever you're currently doing isn't working, so you need to switch it up. I'm sure you guys are thinking, what do I do, right? Well, the best thing that worked for me is when I was actually switching back and forth between light and heavy, almost similar to power building. So I would keep my compound movements very, very heavy. Obviously, I had a cyclical pattern that I was keeping on that because I was worried about maintaining strength. But my accessories, I would keep them moderate but high volume. So still keeping into 8 to 12, but keeping it a little on the heavier side and keeping the volume also high. So I was getting like a ton of structural stress for my compound movements, but not a lot of volume necessarily. Because, hey, maybe I was doing 3x3 triples on squats. I was going heavy, or I was going 3x5. Not a lot of volume, like relatively, right? If you do the math out, let's say for bench press, okay, let's say I'm doing 3x3 with 315, right? Well, that's not a ton of volume as if I was doing 275 for sets of 12 for 4 sets. I'm getting way more volume even though I'm lifting 275. So there's a little bit of nuance there. And obviously, you're going to have to run your own calculations on what your volume is and what you're doing. But don't be afraid to mix it up. And I, more often than not, especially at these commercial gyms, when I stroll through, there's a lot of people doing way too like easy sets. Even if they're lifting light or they're going like a moderate hypertrophy, you could just tell by the way they're lifting it. It's like you have 20 more reps in the tank. Maybe they're just really good at faking it. Maybe it was really hard and they're just keeping a really straight face the whole time. But more often than not, people don't know how to push themselves to that limit, and maybe they don't actually gauge it properly. So know I'm kind of going on a rant here, but that's my 2 cents on whether to lift heavy or lift light. If you're natural, you probably want to lift a little bit heavier. And if you're a woman, you're not going to get bulky. You probably definitely need to lift heavier to get that structural stress and that overload. And there's a lot of nuance when it comes to age, when it comes to past injuries, what exercise works for you, what doesn't, and also your genetic makeup of your muscle fiber tissue and your bellies and your insertions and your leverage points. And obviously, we're assuming that your programming is decent with exercise variation and you have good sleep and good nutrition. Thank you for watching. If you guys want more videos, like, subscribe. Any questions, drop them below. And